The rain fell with a slow rhythm that afternoon, like heaven's own tears washing over the tired city of Lagos. It was not the kind of rain that destroyed, it was the kind that revealed. The kind that made people pause, reflect, and remember that no matter how rich or poor one became, water still touched everyone the same way. At the red light in Ikoyi, sleek cars idled under the grey sky. Among them was a black Mercedes Maybach, its windows tinted deep enough to hide the eyes of the woman inside. Mrs. Adesua Williams sat there, watching the world through the blur of rain and glass, her diamond ring glinting faintly against the steering wheel. Her driver, Musa, sat still, waiting for the traffic to move. She wasn't looking at the road, she was staring at something else. A young boy standing barefoot in the rain, holding two crying babies. Before we go deep into this story, please let me know the country you are watching from and don't forget to subscribe. The boy could not have been more than 15. His shirt was soaked, sticking to his small frame. One baby was tied to his back with a faded wrapper, the other pressed against his chest with trembling arms. Water dripped from his hair to his face, but his eyes, oh his eyes, carried something older than his years. Pain and pride lived there together. He was begging, but not the usual kind of begging. There was no greed in his voice, no performance, just quiet desperation, spoken through the tears of the infants he held. The traffic light blinked red again, forcing Adesua to keep watching. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, a pull deep in her chest, the kind that made her remember a story she had buried long ago. Musa turned slightly, noticing her expression. "Madam, should I wind up? This rain fit make you catch cold?" She didn't respond immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the boy as a downpour splashed dirty water near him. The boy flinched but didn't move away. He gently rocked the crying baby, whispering something, his lips trembling. Adesua's throat tightened. It wasn't pity she felt, it was recognition. That silent struggle, that dignity in pain, reminded her of herself when her husband died 20 years ago, leaving her alone to raise a son who later walked away from everything she built. The driver repeated softly, "Madam." She whispered, "Wait." Her voice carried a calm authority, the kind that froze time. The light turned green. Cars began to move, honking impatiently. But Adesua didn't signal Musa to drive. The boy looked up just then, and for a moment their eyes met, the drenched orphan and the billionaire widow. The city noise faded. In that instant it was just rain, memory, and something divine. She reached for her purse, took out some bills, then paused. No, it wasn't money this moment was asking for. Money could buy silence, not stories. Money could feed for a day, not change a life. "Park there," she said. Finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Musa frowned. "Madam, for here?" "Yes. There," she repeated, already unbuckling her seatbelt. Her tone carried that Lagos kind of finality, the one that didn't invite debate. She stepped out into the rain, her umbrella opening like a small act of defiance against the sky. Drivers stared, the famous Adesua Williams, out of her Maybach, walking toward a barefoot boy in the street. The boy froze, unsure whether to run or bow. The babies whimpered softly. Adesua stopped in front of him, her heels splashing in shallow puddles. "What is your name?" she asked quietly. "Tunde." "Ma," he stammered. "And these babies?" He looked down at them, tears mixing with rain. "My sister's children, Ma. She died last month." Adesua felt her heart drop. "And your parents?" He shook his head. "I no get, Ma." For a long, silent second, she simply watched him, her umbrella tilted slightly to cover both of them. The rain softened as if listening. Then she said the words that would change both their lives. "Follow me." And somewhere above them, between thunder and grace, destiny shifted its seat. The drive from Ikoyi to Banana Island was quiet, broken only by the gentle hum of the Maybach and the soft coos of the babies now asleep. Tunde sat in the back seat beside Adesua, his wet clothes leaving faint marks on the leather seat. He kept glancing around, eyes wide with disbelief. Every turn, every streetlight seemed to belong to another world entirely. The rain had stopped, but the city lights shimmered on the wet roads like scattered jewels. Musa looked at the boy through the mirror, curiosity in his eyes, but he said nothing. Adeswa stared ahead, silent, her mind heavy with unspoken memories. She had rescued children before, through her foundation, her donations, her quiet acts of kindness. But something about this boy felt different. There was a depth in his eyes that carried both pain and promise. When they arrived at the tall iron gates of her mansion, the security men straightened immediately. "Good evening, madam," one greeted as the gate opened. Tunde's jaw dropped. The driveway stretched like a small road, lined with palm trees swaying under the night breeze. The mansion stood ahead, glowing with golden light. It didn't look like a house. It looked like forgiveness, sculpted in marble and glass. Adeswa stepped out first, her heels clicking against the tiles. She turned to the boy. "Come," she said softly. He hesitated, glancing at the babies tied against his small body. "Ma, should I enter with them?" he asked. Her expression softened. "You don't leave family outside, my dear. Bring them." That single line would echo in Tunde's heart for years. Inside, the mansion felt like another planet. The chandeliers glittered like frozen stars. The air smelled of lavender and lemon polish. Portraits of Adesua's late husband and her son Toby adorned the walls, his face strong and proud, the kind that made people assume life had been kind to him. But beneath that polished smile, a story slept in silence. "Martha," Adesua called. A middle-aged housekeeper appeared, her wrapper neatly tied, surprise written across her face. "Madam, welcome. Who be this boy?" "Get warm water and towels," Adesua ordered. "He and the babies need care." Martha blinked. "Madam, inside here?" Adesua's tone turned calm but final. "Yes, Martha, inside here." The housekeeper nodded, muttering softly in Yoruba as she hurried off, glancing back at the dripping boy. Tunde stood still, afraid to move further. Everything shone too bright, too clean. He looked down at his muddy feet and whispered, "Ma, I go stain your floor." Adesua smiled faintly. "Floors can be cleaned, my son, but kindness, once refused, leaves a stain that never fades." Her words carried the weight of experience. As she helped him untie the babies, her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but memory. Her own son had been about this boy's age when he last called her mother, before walking out after a bitter argument over wealth and purpose. That night, she had wept until dawn, clutching his photo to her chest. Now, as she wiped the rain from Tunde's face, something in her soul began to heal. Slowly, cautiously, like a scar learning how to breathe again. By the time Martha returned with warm water and clean towels, the twins were sleeping soundly on a velvet couch. Their small breaths filled the silence. Adesua watched them, her eyes glistening. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" she asked softly. Tunde shook his head. "No, Ma, I just move from one shop front to another. Some nights, dem chase me." She nodded slowly, her heart breaking a little more. "Then from tonight, you will not sleep on the street again." The boy's eyes widened. "Ma, you mean—" "I mean," she said gently, "that you and the babies will stay here. For now." Tunde sank to his knees, overwhelmed. "God bless you, Ma, God bless you," he cried. The sound echoed through the grand hall, mixing gratitude with disbelief. Adeswa reached down, touched his shoulder, and said quietly, "Don't thank me yet, my son. Sometimes blessings come with stories we're not ready to tell." Outside, the rain began again, soft, forgiving, and endless, like grace returning home. Morning came gently over the mansion, painting the sky gold through tall windows. Birds sang from the mango tree at the back, the kind of melody that makes even the rich remember that peace cannot be bought. Adeswa stood at the balcony with a cup of tea, her silk robe fluttering as she watched the compound come alive. Gardeners trimming flowers, the chef rolling up the blinds in the kitchen, Martha sweeping quietly. But her mind was far away, still replaying the image of that boy in the rain. Something about him had refused to leave her spirit. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his trembling hands holding those babies, his eyes too mature for his age. It was as if God himself had placed him in her path, not for pity, but for purpose. Downstairs, Tundi sat on a cushioned chair, awkward and alert, his thin fingers rubbing the edge of his shirt. The twins were now clean, wrapped in soft clothes that made them look like tiny angels. One smiled in her sleep, the other cooed softly, reaching for the sunlight. Martha watched from the kitchen door, her face a mix of curiosity and concern. "Madam, I hope say this one no go be wahala," she muttered under her breath. Adeswa turned to her calmly. "Martha, sometimes God hides miracles in mess. If you clean too quickly, you might throw one away." The words silenced Martha. She nodded, went back to her chores, though her mind lingered on what kind of miracle came barefoot. Adeswa sat opposite the boy. "Tunda," she began, "tell me everything. No fear, just truth." The boy looked down, then took a deep breath. "Ma, my sister name be Amina. She get those babies for one man. We promised to marry her, but no do am. When she born them, she still dey work small. Small at Mama Said's canteen, but one night she fall sick. Fever, ma. She die before morning." His voice trembled. "I no fit leave the babies. I just dey carry them up and down, beg make people give us food." His story was raw, honest, without decoration. Adesua felt a lump in her throat. "And the man? The father of the babies?" she asked quietly. He hesitated, frowning. "Ma, I never see am. She say he no fit come around. Say he get money but he shame." Adesua's heart squeezed. That word, shame, it carried too many stories in African homes. She leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "Do you know his name?" she asked. Tunde shook his head slowly. "Only say him name, na Mr. Toby." The teacup nearly slipped from her hand. The sound of her name echoed faintly in the hall. Toby. Her chest tightened, her breathing shallow. "What? What did you say?" she asked, voice trembling. "Yes, ma. Toby. Amina say he be rich man. Way talk say him mama. No go gree make he marry poor girl." Adesua froze. Her world tilted. The silence that followed was so heavy it pressed against the walls. She looked at the boy again, really looked. The sharp nose, the shape of the jaw, even the little crease near his eye. Her son had that same crease. Her son, Toby Williams. Her hands trembled as her mind fought the impossible truth forming before her eyes. She rose quietly and walked to the large portrait on the wall, the one of Toby smiling in his graduation suit. Her fingers brushed against the frame as tears filled her eyes. "Madam, you dey okay?" Martha called faintly. She didn't answer. Her lips moved silently, whispering a name she had sworn never to repeat. Her son, the boy she raised, with every ounce of love, who left her to chase money and foreign dreams, had a child out there. Two, maybe, and the one sitting before her now was their only hope. She turned slowly, her voice distant. "Tunde, my dear, when your sister died, where did they bury her?" He pointed vaguely. "A small place near Yaba, ma. Nobody fit pay for coffin." The words broke something inside her. Adesua sat down again, tears rolling freely. Tunde looked frightened. "Ma, I talk something bad?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, forcing a weak smile. "No, my son, you've spoken truth, and truth sometimes feels like thunder before rain." Her voice wavered, but it carried wisdom. She looked at the twins now, their tiny hands, their fragile peace, her grandchildren, flesh of her flesh. She covered her face with trembling palms, whispering, "Oh God, you brought them home yourself." Outside, the morning breeze carried the smell of wet earth and hibiscus, and for the first time in 20 years, Adesua Williams felt both broken and blessed in the same heartbeat. That afternoon, the sky darkened again, as though heaven itself was unsettled. Adesua sat alone in her study, her tea untouched, her mind replaying Tunde's words over and over. "His name is Mr. Toby." She could still hear them echoing in her ears. The name she once said with pride now felt like a question carved into her soul. Her son, Toby Williams. Last she heard, he had moved to South Africa for business after selling his father's company shares. Years without a call, not even a message. Just silence and news from others. "Your boy is doing well abroad." Yet none of them knew that a mother's heart measures distance differently. Her son was alive, but dead to her spirit, until this boy came, soaked and shaking in the rain. On the table before her lay a faded family photo. She, her late husband, and young Toby, standing in front of the old house in Surulere. He couldn't have been more than 12 then, bright-eyed and full of plans. "Mama," he had once said, "I'll build you a house so big people will need directions to find your room." And he did, but he built it far away from himself. She traced the outline of his smile in the photo, tears falling silently. "Toby," she whispered, "what did you do?" Behind her, thunder rolled faintly. Martha peeked in through the half-open door. "Madam, you never touch food since morning." Adeswa didn't look up. "Later," she said softly. "Please call my lawyer. Tell him I need a DNA test arranged, discreetly." Martha blinked. "Madam? For who?" "For the babies," Adeswa said, her voice steady now. "And that boy." Later that evening, Tunda helped feed the twins while sitting on the kitchen floor. He had refused the dining table, saying softly, "I no fit eat where rich people they eat." Martha watched him quietly. Despite her initial suspicion, she was beginning to see what her madam saw, humility without pretense. The boy cleaned after himself, washed the twins' clothes without being told, and sang soft lullabies in Yoruba to put them to sleep. When Adesua walked in, the sight stopped her in her tracks. The kitchen, which had once been filled with the clatter of chefs and polished plates, now held something rarer: peace. "You have a kind heart," she said gently. Tunda jumped, embarrassed. "Ma, I just know one make them cry." "Kindness," she replied, "is never just. It's the first sign of greatness." He smiled shyly, then asked, "Ma, why you help me that day? You no even know me." She paused before answering. "Because once upon a time, someone helped me too, when I thought the world had forgotten me." He looked confused, but her eyes told him it was not a story to ask about yet. "Sleep early tonight," she said. "Tomorrow someone will come to see you." As she turned to leave, the boy spoke again. "Ma?" She looked back. "Thank you. Even if I die tomorrow, I go tell God say one rich woman still get good heart." The words hit her chest like a soft arrow. She nodded once and walked away, holding back tears. The boy's innocence carried a weight that no gold could match. That night, as Lagos slept under the hum of distant rain, Adeswa stood again before the portrait of her son. Her reflection merged with his, mother and child, separated by time and choices. "If these children are yours, Toby," she whispered, "then God has brought them to me, because you could not bring yourself back home." She closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. If blood must speak, let it speak now. Outside, lightning flashed once, quick and quiet, as though heaven had signed an unseen agreement. In another part of the mansion, Tundi slept beside the twins, his hand resting protectively over their small bodies. For the first time since his sister's death, his breathing was calm. He didn't know that tomorrow would change everything. That truth was already on its way. Carrying both mercy and fire, morning broke with a quiet brightness that made everything inside the mansion feel new. The marble floors gleamed, the scent of freshly baked bread drifted from the kitchen, and the twins giggled from their crib near the window. Yet beneath that calm surface, something deeper moved, like a river of truth beneath still water. Adeswa sat in her study dressed in white, her phone and documents spread across the desk. The lawyer, Mr. Balogun, an elderly man with silver hair and gentle eyes, sat opposite her. He had been with the family for decades. He knew her husband, he knew Toby, and he understood silence better than most. "Madam," he said softly, adjusting his glasses, "you are certain you want this test done quietly?" "Yes," she replied firmly. "I don't want the press involved. Not yet. Not until I'm sure." Balogun nodded. "It will be done by evening. The results within 3 days." She sighed, her gaze drifting to the twins' toys on the table. "And when the truth comes?" The old lawyer smiled faintly. "Then truth will do what truth always does, heal or burn." At that moment, Martha entered with a tray. "Madam, your phone day ring." She placed it on the table. The screen flashed a name Adesua hadn't seen in years: Toby Williams. Her heart skipped. Her hand hovered above the phone like it might bite. Balogun's eyebrows lifted. "Madam," he whispered. Adesua inhaled deeply, steadying herself, then answered. "Toby." "Mum?" The voice came through, low and distant, mixed with static. It's been a while. Her throat tightened. A while? You disappear for 7 years, Toby. 7. I know, he said quietly. I wasn't ready to face you. Face me, she repeated. Or face what you became. There was silence. Then his voice softened. Mom, I'm coming home next week. I have something to tell you. About someone. Her fingers clenched around the phone. Who? He hesitated. A woman. She passed recently. She left. Children. The world froze. Her eyes filled with tears as Balogun and Martha exchanged glances. Toby, she whispered. What did you say? I'll explain when I come, Mom, he said. Just, please don't judge me until you know everything. Before she could respond, the line went dead. For a long while, Adesua sat motionless, her heartbeat echoing like a drum. Martha moved closer. Madam, it be like God dey write this story by himself. Adesua looked up slowly. Yes, Martha. But when God writes, he doesn't use pencil, he doesn't erase. Later that evening, Mr. Balogun supervised the DNA collection quietly. A discreet nurse took samples from the twins and from Tunde, who watched with confusion but obeyed. Ma, why dem collect my saliva? He asked. Adesua knelt before him, her tone calm. Sometimes we do tests not to prove people wrong, but to prove love right. He nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting her. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Adesua stood once more in front of her late husband's portrait. Kunle, she whispered to the painted face, our son sowed a seed in shame, but God has turned it into grace. She closed her eyes. If this boy and these babies are truly his, then let our home become their shelter. Outside, the rain started again, soft, familiar, like a drumbeat of destiny returning home. Inside, the house that had long been silent began to breathe again, waiting for the day when truth would finally arrive at the door. The following week, the mansion woke before dawn. The cleaners polished the marble floors twice, the gardeners trimmed every hedge, and the chef prepared the special jollof rice Adesua always served on meaningful days. Yet she wasn't hosting a business, partner, or a dignitary. Her son, her only son, was coming home. The thought alone made her hands tremble as she arranged the flowers in the sitting room. 7 years. 7 years of unanswered calls, of holidays spent staring at a silent phone. Now he was coming back, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. At noon, a black Range Rover drove through the gate. The sound of its tires on the gravel made Adesua's chest tighten. She stood by the entrance, regal in her gold lace, her posture steady but her soul shaking. When the door opened, Toby stepped out, tall, confident, with a foreign air and a tired smile. He looked every bit the successful businessman the tabloids described. Yet beneath that polished exterior, guilt clung to him like a second skin. Mom, he said softly. She stared at him for a long moment before stepping forward. Her hand trembled as it brushed his cheek. You came back, she whispered. His voice cracked. I never stopped missing you. Inside, the housekeeper and staff watched quietly from the corners, pretending to dust and sweep. Martha wiped her eyes discreetly. The twins slept peacefully in the nursery, and Tunde, curious, peeked through the corridor, seeing a man who looked oddly familiar. Adesua led her son into the living room. They sat in heavy silence for a while before she finally spoke. You said there's something you wanted to tell me. He nodded, lowering his gaze. Mom, I made mistakes. Big ones. She didn't interrupt. Years ago, I met a woman, Amina. She worked at a small food place near Yaba. She was kind, strong, and she reminded me of you. His voice faltered, but when she got pregnant, I got scared. I wasn't ready. I told myself I'd send money later, make it right somehow. But I never did. She reached out once, and I ignored it. And now she's gone. His words hung heavy in the room. Adesua's eyes glistened, but she stayed still. Do you know what became of the children? She asked slowly. He nodded. I was told she had twins. I tried to find them, but nobody knew where she lived before she died. Adesua exhaled shakily. And their uncle? The boy who was with her? Toby frowned. I heard she had a younger brother, yes, but I never met him. She looked at him deeply, the same eyes, the same mouth as Tunde. "And if I told you they were here, under this roof?" she asked quietly. Toby froze. "What?" "I found a boy in the rain," she said, her voice steady but soft. "He was holding 2 babies, your babies, Toby." His eyes widened in disbelief. "That's impossible." "Look at them," she interrupted, pointing toward the hallway. "You'll see your own face." At that moment, Tunda stepped into the room, holding one of the twins. The baby's small fingers clutched his shirt. The sight struck Toby like a blow. The boy looked up, confused, innocent. Adesua's voice broke the silence. "His name is Tunda, your late lover's brother. The twins, your children." Toby's world spun. He stared at the baby's tiny features, the nose, the dimple, even the shape of the eyes. He stepped forward slowly, trembling. "Oh God," he whispered. "What have I done?" His knees gave way, and he sank to the floor, covering his face. "I abandoned them. I abandoned her." Adesua knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "And yet God brought them back to you through mercy, not punishment. Do not waste that mercy." Her words were both rebuke and redemption. Toby wept openly now, his sobs echoing through the quiet hall. Tundi stood frozen, not fully understanding the gravity of the moment, only feeling that something divine was happening. After a long silence, Adesua spoke again. "You will make it right, Toby. Not with money, but with love. You will raise them, and you will honor their mother's memory." He nodded through tears. "Yes, Mom, I swear I will." That night, as the family ate dinner together for the first time in years, something sacred filled the air, the quiet miracle of reconciliation. For the first time in her mansion, Adesua felt like a mother again, not a lonely billionaire. But unknown to them, truth had only begun its work. For in every story of mercy, there is still a shadow of justice waiting beyond the next chapter. The days that followed felt like walking on glass. The mansion that once echoed with silence now rang with children's laughter, but also with unspoken tension. Adesua watched quietly as her son, Toby, tried to fit himself into the life he had once rejected. He bought new clothes for the twins, arranged a private doctor's visit, and ordered a nanny service, but none of those gestures could wash away the weight of the past. He carried his guilt like an invisible scar, hidden under polished suits and expensive watches. Meanwhile, Tunde, the boy who had carried those babies through storms, moved carefully, unsure of his place. He slept in a small guest room by the servants' quarters, though Adesua had offered him more. "Ma," he'd said shyly, "I dey okay there. I no one disturb." One morning, Adesua found him washing the twins' clothes in a bowl behind the kitchen. "Tunde," she said softly, "you don't have to do this anymore. We have people now." He shook his head, smiling faintly. "Dem no go wash am the way I wan makey clean. I know how dem skin dey react. If soap too strong, rash go come." She stared at him for a moment, a boy who had lost everything, but still thought only of others. "You have a good heart," she said again, as she had said before. But this time, her voice carried both pride and sadness. Later that day, Toby walked into the courtyard, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in the tone of a man used to being obeyed. "Tell the board I'll be back by next week. The deal can wait." When he hung up, he turned and saw Tunde, still washing. "Hey," he said, his voice trying to sound kind but landing cold. "You don't have to do that anymore. We can get staff to handle it." Tunde looked up, water dripping from his arms. "Sir, I just help small." Toby frowned slightly at the word sir. It stung, though he didn't know why. "You're living in my mother's house now," he said. "You don't need to act like a servant." The boy nodded slowly, unsure what to say. He could feel the man's discomfort, the rich man's awkward guilt before the poor boy who had done what he couldn't. That evening, as the family sat for dinner, the tension grew thicker. The twins babbled cheerfully in their high chairs. Adesua smiled faintly at them, but noticed how Toby barely spoke, his gaze lost somewhere far away. "What troubles you, my son?" she asked. He sighed. I don't know how to fix what I broke. Every time I look at those babies, I see my shame." Adesua reached across the table, touching his hand. "Then stop looking with shame. Look with purpose. God doesn't bring back what he wants us to bury, he brings back what he wants us to rebuild. Her voice was soft but commanding. Tunde listened quietly, his spoon frozen midway. He wanted to speak, to say that forgiveness was easy to preach but hard to live beside, but he kept silent. When dinner ended, he carried the twins to their crib, humming softly. As he laid them down, he whispered, "Una papa de try, but he still de learn love." He didn't know Adesua was standing behind him, listening. She smiled sadly, then said, "And maybe love is learning all over again." But later that night, as the mansion went dark, Toby stood alone on the balcony, looking over the city lights. His chest felt heavy. The voice of his late father echoed faintly in his memory. A man is not judged by the empire he builds, but by the hearts he heals. Tears stung his eyes. Down below he saw Tunde still awake, rocking one of the twins who had started crying. For a moment he envied the boy's peace. He whispered to himself, "He's doing my job better than I ever could." Then, with a heavy heart, he turned away. And as the wind brushed through the palm trees, Adesua watched both of her sons, one of blood, one of fate, walking the same roof under different kinds of burden. By the third week, the mansion had turned into a quiet battlefield of emotions. From the outside, it looked perfect. Laughter in the mornings, toys scattered in the lounge, the smell of food always floating from the kitchen. But beneath that harmony was tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Toby had returned to his old confident self on the surface, calling business partners, taking video calls, giving orders in his deep voice. Yet every time his eyes met Tunde's, something uneasy stirred. The silent reminder that while he ran away, this boy had stayed and suffered. Adesua noticed it too. She could sense pride wrestling with guilt, and she knew the time for truth was near. One humid evening, the rain began again, the kind that beats against windows like impatient fingers. Tunde was in the nursery, humming softly as he fed the twins their porridge. He smiled when the little girl smeared some on his cheek. Just then, Toby entered. His face looked tired, his tie loosened, his eyes shadowed. "You're still awake?" he asked. "Dem no one sleep yet, sir," Tunde replied politely. "That, sir, again." It grated against Toby's nerves like sandpaper. "You don't have to call me sir," he said, his tone sharp. "Just Toby." "Okay, sir. I mean Toby," the boy corrected quickly. There was a pause, filled only by the twins' playful sounds. "You're good with them," Toby said quietly. "Better than I am." Tunde looked down, uncomfortable. "I just do wettin' my sister go do if she's still day alive." Something in that answer pierced Toby's heart. He nodded slowly, then said, almost to himself, "I killed her spirit, didn't I? She trusted me, and I destroyed her." Tunde looked up sharply. "No talk like that, sir. She no hate you." Toby's voice rose slightly. "How do you know? You were just a boy." "I day there when she talk about you every night." Tunde shot back suddenly, his voice trembling. "She no curse you one day. Even when she's sick, she still day pray make God forgive you. You think you be the only one way suffer? We all suffer. Those babies no even get milk some nights, and she still day say, maybe him go come back." The room went silent except for the rain hammering the glass. Toby stared at him, chest heaving, anger melting into shame. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he whispered. Tunde swallowed hard, tears forming. "Then at least live like somebody we want am." His words were raw, honest and heavy with pain. Then he turned away, rocking the twins gently. Toby stood frozen for a long time, then walked out without another word. In her bedroom upstairs, Adesua had heard everything. She sat at the edge of her bed, eyes glistening. She wanted to step in, to stop the storm, but she knew some storms must break before peace can follow. That night, as thunder rumbled across the lagoon, she prayed softly, "Lord, if you brought them together by rain, don't let pride scatter them by fire." The next morning, the air was thick with silence. Toby came down early, already dressed for work. Tunde was sweeping the corridor, eyes down. As Toby passed, he paused, his voice quieter now. "Thank you for what you said last night." Tunde looked up, startled. "I mean it," Toby continued. "You spoke truth I didn't want to hear." The boy smiled faintly. "Sometimes truth no day sweet, but a day cure." Toby nodded, the corner of his mouth twitching upward for the first time in days. Later that afternoon, Adesua watched from her balcony as both of them sat in the garden together, awkward but trying. Toby helped Tunda fix the broken stroller, and the twins laughed as the two men struggled with screws and bolts. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. She smiled to herself and whispered, "Maybe the rain wasn't punishment. Maybe it was the sound of God knocking." But unknown to them, another storm was coming, one that would test their fragile peace and force the entire household to face the price of hidden sin. For 2 weeks, peace lingered in the mansion like a fragile visitor, welcome but never fully trusted. Toby and Tunda spoke more now, though their conversations were short and careful, like people walking barefoot on broken glass. The twins brought light to every corner, their laughter filled even the coldest rooms. Adesua watched all of it with quiet joy, though she often prayed under her breath, "Lord, don't let pride come again between my sons." She called them sons now, both of them, though only one had her blood. One Saturday morning, the household prepared for an outreach organized by the Adesua Williams Foundation. It was a charity drive in Yaba, the same area where Amina had once worked and died. Adesua insisted they all go together. "If God gives you a second chance," she said firmly, "you must return to the place where you failed the first time." Her words cut straight into Toby's conscience. He agreed silently. They arrived to find a sea of people, widows, orphans, beggars, and children, chasing the food trucks with excitement. Cameras flashed, journalists whispered her name with reverence. The billionaire with a mother's heart. Adesua moved among the crowd with grace, giving out food, greeting old women, blessing children. Tunde stood near the medical tent, helping distribute medicine, while Toby handed out cash envelopes to single mothers. Everything seemed perfect until one voice broke through the noise. "Toby Williams." The sound froze him. He turned, and there stood a man in a dusty shirt, face darkened with anger. "You remember me," the man shouted. "I was Amina's cousin. You promised her heaven and gave her hell." The crowd fell silent. The cameras turned instantly. Adesua's heart stopped. Tunde ran forward, eyes wide. "Uncle Femi," he gasped. The man's eyes burned. "So it's true. You're living with him now, the man that destroyed your sister." He stepped closer, jabbing a finger toward Toby. "You think money can buy forgiveness?" Toby's voice shook. "I was wrong. I know I failed her. I came to make things right." "Right?" Femi spat. "Right would be bringing her back." He lunged forward, and Toby instinctively stepped back, bumping into a donation stand. Security rushed in, separating them, but the damage was done. Cameras captured everything: the outburst, the accusation, the billionaire's son brought to public shame. Adesua's reputation trembled on the edge of scandal. That night, back at the mansion, silence hung like smoke. The news had already spread. Billionaire's son confronted by late worker's family. Adesua sat in her study, exhausted, her hands trembling slightly as she switched off the TV. Toby stood by the window staring into the rain. "I've destroyed your name again," he whispered. She looked up at him. "My name can be repaired. Your soul is what I'm worried about." Tunda entered quietly, his clothes still damp from the chaos. "Ma," he said softly, "Uncle Femi don vex, but he no bad man. He just never heal." Adesua nodded slowly. "And healing comes when truth finds air." She turned to Toby. "Tomorrow you will go to him, not with cameras, not with guards, alone." Toby frowned. "He hates me." "All the more reason to face him," she said gently. "Running from guilt is how this all began." The next day, Toby obeyed. He went to Yaba alone, walked through the muddy streets where Amina once lived. He found Femi sitting outside a small mechanic shop, his face still hard. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Toby knelt on the ground, in the mud, before the man he'd wronged. "I can't bring her back," he said quietly, "but I'll take care of her children until my last breath. I'll make her name known, and I'll make peace with what I've done." Femi's eyes softened slightly. "Words," he muttered. "Everybody get words." Toby nodded. "Then watch my actions." He left a small envelope on the bench, not of money, but of Amina's photos he had printed from her old phone. She deserved to be remembered, he whispered, and walked away. When he returned home that night, Adesua met him at the door. She said nothing, just hugged him. A long, trembling embrace between a mother and a son who had finally begun to understand repentance. Upstairs, Tunde watched quietly from the corridor, the twins asleep in his arms. A faint smile touched his lips. For the first time since Amina's death, the air around them felt lighter, as if heaven had started to open its windows again. But destiny was not finished. In the corner of Adesua's desk, a small brown envelope waited. The DNA results. Still sealed, still silent, waiting for the moment truth would no longer be guessed, but confirmed. The morning after the outreach felt unusually still. Even the sea breeze that usually whispered through the palm trees had fallen silent, as though waiting. Adesua sat at her mahogany desk, staring at the brown envelope before her. The DNA test results. It had arrived 2 days earlier, but she had avoided it. Some truths, she thought, are like storms. You know they'll cleanse the air, but they might also tear down what you've built. Martha stood by the door, wringing her hands. "Madam, make I open for you?" Adesua shook her head slowly. "No. Some doors a person must open for herself." She slit the envelope, gently, and unfolded the papers. Her eyes scanned the lines once, twice, then froze. Her lips parted, her breath shallow. A sound escaped her throat, half sigh, half prayer. Martha stepped forward, alarmed. "Madam, wetting happen?" Adesua's hand trembled as she whispered, "The babies are his." Her voice cracked. "But the boy isn't." She sank into her chair, tears spilling freely. "Tunde is not her brother by blood." Martha gasped. "Ha, you mean—" "Yes," Adesua said, staring into nothing. "He has no blood relation to them. The DNA says 0% match. He's not Amina's brother." The room fell into stunned silence. The weight of that revelation pressed on every corner of her chest. "Then who is he?" Martha whispered. Adesua folded the paper slowly, her mind spinning. "That," she said, "is what we must find out." Later that day, Adesua called both Tunde and Toby into the study. The twins played in a small crib nearby, oblivious to the storm brewing over them. She looked from one to the other, her 2 sons by destiny, and sighed deeply. "I received the test results," she began. Her voice was calm but heavy. Toby swallowed hard, bracing for confirmation. "The twins are yours, Toby," she said softly. Relief and guilt flooded his face all at once. "Thank God," he whispered. Then she continued, "But Tunde, the test says you are not related to them." The boy froze. "Ma, what do you mean?" "You're not Amina's brother, my dear. Not by blood." He blinked rapidly, confusion clouding his face. "But she raised me. She say she my sister." Toby looked equally stunned. "Mom, is that possible? Maybe there was a mistake." Adesua handed the papers silently. "I checked twice." Tunde's eyes filled with tears as his mind searched backward through every memory. Amina laughing with him, calling him my brother, feeding him, protecting him from bullies, carrying him on her back. "She tell me say our mama die when I small," he whispered. "Say na why I no remember." His voice broke. "If she no be my sister, then who I be?" Adesua's heart shattered. She rose and knelt beside him, holding his shaking shoulders. "You may not share her blood," she said softly, "but you share her love. And sometimes love is a stronger bloodline than any test." Tunde buried his face in his hands, sobbing quietly. Toby sat frozen, overwhelmed by the layers of guilt and grace tangled in front of him. That evening, Adesua went through her late husband's old files, searching for any record that could explain Tunde's origin. Near midnight, she found a faded hospital document tucked between old receipts. An adoption form dated 15 years ago, signed by her late husband, Kunle Williams. Her hands trembled. The child's name, Tunde Kunle Williams. Her breath caught. "My husband. Adopted him?" she whispered. She looked at the attached infant photo, the same eyes, the same faint birthmark near the ear. Tears blurred her vision. "Oh, Kunle," she murmured, "you kept this secret even from me." At dawn, she called them both again. Tunde sat nervously, his eyes swollen. Toby stood beside the window, tense and uncertain. Adesua placed the paper on the table. Tunde, she said gently, you were adopted as a baby. My husband, your father, found you at a hospital. You were abandoned. He brought you home briefly before traveling abroad for surgery. He never told me what became of you. The boy's lips parted, speechless. Toby stepped forward slowly, eyes wide. That means… Yes, Adesua whispered, smiling through tears. You are brothers, not by mistake, not by mercy, but by divine design. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then Toby reached out and pulled Tunde into his arms. The boy resisted at first, then broke, weeping against his chest. Adesua covered her mouth, sobbing softly. God writes stories in circles, she whispered. He lost his brother in pride, but he returned him in the rain. Later that night, as the city lights shimmered on the lagoon, Adesua stood by her balcony once more. Below, Toby and Tunde played with the twins, laughter echoing through the courtyard. The sound was pure, not of wealth, but of redemption. She smiled faintly, whispering to herself, blood may forget, but love remembers, and the family God chooses cannot be broken. The sky above her cleared, the first time in weeks without rain. But the wet ground below still glistened, a reminder that sometimes heaven must weep before it blesses. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, laughter returned to Adesua's mansion like an invited guest. The air itself seemed lighter. The twins toddled around the living room, their giggles echoing off marble floors once silent with grief. Toby had changed. The restless businessman who once lived for deals now woke up early to feed his children, to carry them in his arms as they played beneath the mango tree. Sometimes he'd pause and look up at the sky, whispering Amina's name like a prayer. Tunde, now officially recognized as Adesua's son, settled into school and therapy sessions arranged by her foundation. He was learning not just mathematics or English, but how to exist in a world that suddenly loved him back. Adesua, meanwhile, carried a quiet radiance. Every evening, she sat at her husband's old desk, signing new plans for the Amina Williams Motherhood Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping young mothers and orphans. If Amina's pain gave birth to mercy, she said during the press launch, then her memory will live forever in the children she inspires us to save. Cameras flashed, reporters praised her humility. But behind that public grace was a private vow whispered to God. Never again will my wealth be higher than my compassion. One afternoon, after the foundation launch, Toby approached his mother in the garden. He had trimmed his beard, looking calmer, humbler. Mom, he began softly, I want to move back here for a while. The city can wait. I need to be near my family. Adesua smiled faintly. You finally learned what wealth truly is. He nodded. I used to think it was freedom. Now I know it's forgiveness. They sat quietly, watching the twins chase butterflies near the fountain, while Tunde read them a storybook. The sight made Adesua's eyes glisten. Sometimes, she said, God uses one broken boy to heal a whole house. Later that night, as dinner ended, Toby handed his mother an envelope. What's this? She asked. My shares in the company, he replied, half of them. I want them in the foundation's name, for Amina's children and others like them. Adesua froze. Toby, that's millions. Then let it be millions of mercy, he said quietly. Money built my pride once. Maybe now it can build peace. She stared at him, tears shining, pride softening her features. You're finally your father's son, she whispered. As the family prayed together before bed, the rain began again, soft and rhythmic, tapping gently on the windows. But this time it wasn't cold or sorrowful. It was warm, cleansing, like the sound of heaven breathing. In the nursery, the twins slept peacefully, their tiny hands clasped together. Tunde sat beside them, whispering, Good night, Amina. Your children stay safe now. Outside, the city lights shimmered on wet streets, reflecting the glow of a mansion that no longer felt like marble and glass, but like home. Upstairs, Adesua stood by the balcony, her robe fluttering softly. She looked at the clouds and smiled. God may delay, she whispered, but he never forgets. The morning sun rose over Lagos like gold poured gently across the rooftops. For the first time in many years, Adesua Williams woke not to silence, but to laughter echoing through her home. The twins' small feet pattered across the corridor, Tunde's voice carried from the garden, reading aloud from a picture book. She stood by her window, letting the warmth touch her face. Peace had finally come, not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that grows from surviving it. After breakfast, she gathered everyone in the courtyard, Toby, Tunde, the twins, and the household staff who had become family. The mango tree cast dappled shadows over them as Adesua spoke. "When the rain brought Tunde into my car that day," she began, "I thought I was saving a stranger. But it was heaven saving me. It gave me back my son, my grandchildren, and my purpose." Her eyes softened as she looked at Tunde. "You are proof that family isn't only about who shares your blood, but who shares your heart." The boy smiled shyly, his voice trembling. "And you say rich people fit still get soft. Heart, Ma." The crowd laughed softly. Toby stood beside his mother, holding one of the twins. "Mom," he said, his voice humble, "you gave me a second chance when I deserved none. I want to honor that." He turned to the guests from the foundation who had come to visit. "From today we'll open Amina's shelter home, a place for single mothers, orphans, and boys like Tunde, who need a new beginning." Applause filled the air. Even Martha wiped her eyes with her wrapper. After the crowd dispersed, Adesua sat quietly beneath the mango tree, the breeze lifting her scarf. The twins played near her feet while Tunde fixed a small wooden cart for them. Toby walked up behind her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You look peaceful," he said. She smiled faintly. "Because I finally learned the difference between wealth and blessing." "And what's that?" he asked. She looked at the children, her voice soft as the wind. "Wealth fills houses. Blessing fills hearts." Evening came with a soft drizzle, the last rain of the season. The family sat together for dinner, no longer bound by guilt but by gratitude. They laughed, shared stories, and prayed before eating. For a moment, time seemed to pause, a reminder that even the richest lives mean little without love holding them together. Later that night, when everyone had gone to bed, Adesua stepped outside onto the balcony one last time. The moonlight shimmered across the wet ground. She whispered to herself, "It started with a boy in the rain. It ends with a home reborn." She looked up at the heavens, her eyes glistening. Some doors close only to protect us from destruction. Some storms come not to drown us, but to wash our eyes clean enough to see grace. The wind rustled the trees, and somewhere beyond the clouds, thunder rumbled softly, not in anger this time, but in approval. Adesua smiled. "God may delay," she said quietly, "but he never forgets." And with that, the mansion lights dimmed, the rain faded, and peace finally came to stay.